Siden 7. oktober og krigen startet i Gaza, så har vi her hjemme fått nyheter som vi ser med på å øke en voksende antisemitisme overfor også jøder her hjemme i Norge. Og vi får informasjon som ikke korrekt. Vi kan si mediene har et ansvar med hva de gir ut, absolutt. Men du og jeg har også et ansvar om hva vi hører, om vi sjekker kildene på det vi hører, og hva vi faktisk lar oss bli indoktrinert med av den propagandaen som kommer. Nå jeg så heldig å sitte her med Itamar Marcus. Han grunnlegger av Palestinian Media Watch, og vi skal snakke litt om akkurat dette. So Itamar Marcus, welcome. Thank you for meeting us in this interview.
Thank you very much. Great to be with you.
As a founder and director of Palestinian Media Watch, let us first talk about why it was established and what result, what effect it has since it started.
We established the organization in 1996. It was a few years after the signing of the Oslo Accords. And we only knew what the Palestinians were telling the media, what they were telling Israeli negotiators. We wanted to know, what were the Palestinians telling their own people? What were they telling their own children? How were they educating their children? We wanted to know if the Oslo Accords were an honest agreement in which the Palestinian population had changed directions, the PLO had changed and no longer wanted to destroy Israel, or were they the same? And the only way we could find that out, we decided, was listening to what they say to their own people, not what they say to us. And very quickly, we realized that there were two different messages. There was the Arabic language message that the Palestinians gave their own people, and there was the English and other foreign languages to the international community. And then we started translating and publicizing those Arabic language messages. And to much of the world, it was a shock. Initially, much of the world, even within Israel, refused to accept it. No, it can't be. It can't be that they're still teaching their children that Israel is going to be destroyed. It can't be. There's a peace process going on. Well, tragically, we were right from the first day. And everything that we've reported on from then till today, on Palestinian school books, on their crossword puzzles in the official newspaper, on the music and songs and poetry on television and in the newspaper, all of these things pointed to the same indoctrination and hate promotion. And October 7th, the massacre and slaughter and raping and decapitation and murder of 1,200 Israelis is all the result of everything that we, Palestinian Media Watch, has been warning about all these years, that much of the international community, or most of it, decided to ignore.
Since you started in 1996,
yes.
What results have you seen out with the media since that? What has happened?
Well, there have been many times when the international community could not ignore our findings. When we started going to different parliaments with results on the school books. We did our first report on Palestinian school books in 1998. And then another one in 2000, 2001. Every time they changed them a little. And the world was horrified. Went to the European Union, that was the main funder, and they put pressure on the Palestinians. Went to the Norwegian Parliament as well. And we're showing people, look what's going on with your money. You're responsible for the hatred that's being taught because you're paying for it. And over the years, many different countries actually did put pressure on the Palestinian Authority. One of the most important stories that, I should say, exposures that we found was in 2011. We found that the Palestinian Authority was paying salaries to terrorists who were in jail. Every Palestinian prisoner in an Israeli jail, terrorists, no matter if they murdered 10, or Abdallah Barghouti, who murdered 63 people with the bombs that he built. They were all receiving high salaries from the Palestinian Authority. And this was all foreign money. This was Norwegian money going to the Palestinian Authority, and they were spending about 300 million euro a year to reward terrorists and the families of terrorists who were killed in their action. So a suicide bomber would blow himself up, and then his children or wives would receive 1,400 shekel for the rest of their lives, every month, 1 month. So it was, and like I said, it reached, there are 33,000 recipients, and that's before this war. There were 33,000 recipients, families of so-called martyrs. That means terrorists who were killed in the action, and some maybe innocent bystanders who were also martyrs. Primarily it's terrorists who are being rewarded. 33,000, and probably about 10,000 prisoners and released, close to 15,000 prisoners and released prisoners who are receiving monthly salaries. So why would Norway and the European Union and the United States give their taxpayers money so that the Palestinian Authority could spend $300 million a year rewarding terrorists? It's morally wrong, it's illegal, and it's responsible for the terrorism that we have today.
Through Palestinian Media Watch, have some of these funds been reduced since you started?
Yes, absolutely. Some countries completely cut off funding. I spoke to members of Dutch Parliament, and 2 weeks later, the Parliament voted 96 to 54 to cut funding completely to the Palestinian Authority. Canada, at one point, cut all funding. Australia also, a few weeks after I met with members of Parliament, they cut off all the funding. And the United States, under the Taylor-Force Act, cut off funding, and that was the most important. That was $350 million a year under the Trump administration that was cut off. Many other countries lowered the funding. Altogether, the Palestinians have lost about 70% of their funding since we exposed in 2011 that they pay salaries to terrorists. Then they were getting $1.3 billion a year in foreign funding. And today they're getting about, or I would say last year, 2 years ago when they made the announcement, they were getting about 300 million. So they had lost $1 billion a year in funding because of the stories that we exposed.
So this work is leading to something good here, your work in Palestinian Media Watch.
Absolutely, absolutely. The world would still believe that the Palestinians were involved in a real peace process, and they'd be surprised about terror. It's only when you realize that they're telling their people that the terrorists are the heroes. We did a report on the names of schools. 36 schools named after terrorist murderers. 6 schools named after a female terrorist murderer who killed 37 people, including 12 children, Dalal Mughrabi. When you see that, you realize the Palestinian Authority is not involved in a peace process. The tragedy is that there are countries, and Norway is unfortunately one of the Western countries, that refuses to look at all the evidence. They continue to push the Palestinian Authority as if they're a legitimate peace partner. Why don't you look at what they're telling their people? Why do you insist on saying that they really want peace when everything they tell their people and their children is that they don't want peace?
Now when you're here, you have been in the Norwegian Parliament and spoke to some members there. What is your experience of that meeting?
Every time I've met with members of Parliament, they've been horrified by the findings, and they accept the findings, and they will try to do something with the findings, and they will then bring it up. And yesterday again, they talked about, we're going to bring this up in questions and answers, also in the committees that are doing the budget. We're going to insist that they not budget money to any of these projects. What we're trying to show is that it's impossible. If you give money to the Palestinian Authority, no matter where you give the money, it's going to promote terror. If you give it to the school for school books, it's promoting terror. If you give it to the schools, the schools are named after terrorists, so that's promoting terror. If you give it to the Ministry of Culture and Sports, the sporting events are named after terrorists. The summer camps this year were all named in honor of the martyrs. 65,000 children went to summer camps. that were named after martyrs, and they were called, they are moons, they're luminaries. The martyrs are moons and luminaries, they're not just numbers. And we saw from the videos on TV, they were literally learning the names of the terrorists. I'm the brother of this one, I'm the brother of that one, I'm the comrade of this one. So the children are still there. So if you give money to sports, you think it's that. If you give money to culture, we've seen plays and skits where they're teaching them how to kill, and that Israelis are killing them. So anywhere in the Palestinian Authority that Norway gives its money, it's promoting terror. And the only way the Palestinian Authority will ever stop promoting terror is if countries like Norway say zero funding until you become a peace promoter and not a terror promoter. And that's the only way we'll ever start a peace process.
That leads me to the next question, that you're talking about the indoctrination for the Palestinian people and the propaganda out in the world. Because what we see now, the lies that have been told from Palestinian Authority and media, that, we can talk about the lies after, but how can we believe this? I think it's not happened over the night. It's been decades of lies. Can you share a little bit of how they have been indoctrinating, what they have been telling the children who now are grown up and among the terrorists there, and what the Norwegian and the world media is giving out here?
So probably the most significant message the Palestinians give their children, because everything comes from this, the most significant message is that Israel as a state has no right to exist. They teach, the first lie is they said there never was a kingdom of Israel, there never was a kingdom of Judea, there never was a temple. They'll say things outrageous like there never was a coin found in the land that had Hebrew writing. There have been thousands of coins with Hebrew writing. Not only is the kingdoms of Israel and Judea, all their stories mentioned in the Bible, but in the neighboring countries around Israel, they have found etched in stones by the Assyrian leaders, etc., the names of Israel and the names of Israel's king. There is irrefutable evidence, archaeological evidence, as well as the scriptures, that talk about the kingdoms of Israel. Palestinians don't care. They tell their people, the Jews never had a place here, they are foreigners. And then they have to tell their people and their children, why are the Jews here? Why did they come to this land if they have no connection? Why would Jews leave comfortable homes in Europe and the United States and come to this country if they have no connection? So what they teach, and this is, again, the fundamental of their ideology, the Jews were hated by all the European countries because they were evil. Their social role. Mahmoud Abbas recently said this in a famous speech. He said, why did Hitler hate the Jews? It wasn't because they were Jews, it was because of their social role. He killed them because of their social role. Mahmoud Abbas, the head of the PA. He also said this a few years ago. He said the Jews have suffered massacres every few years since the Middle Ages. And then he said, why did this happen? Because of their social role, their usury, their and other reasons. So the Jews brought hatred on themselves. The Jews are responsible for anti-Semitism. The Jews, everybody hates the Jews for good reason. That's what the Palestinians tell the people. And so, in order to solve their Jewish problem, they decided to steal this land and dump their Jews there. An interview just a few weeks ago. A Palestinian was interviewed on Palestinian television, and he was asked, why are the Americans and the Europeans supporting Israel? This was after the Hamas slaughter. And the United States and European countries, many European leaders visited Israel, and they had to explain, well, why are the Europeans supporting Israel? And this was the answer they gave. The Europeans already succeeded in getting rid of their human waste. Jews were the human waste, and they're afraid if Israel loses this war, there'll be reverse migration and the Jews will come back. And they don't want the human waste to come back. The Europeans and Americans are supporting Israel because they want to keep the human waste away from themselves. This is official Palestinian Authority messaging. This is their ideology. Now, so children grow up. I've heard children interviewed on TV, and they'll start talking about Israel, and they'll say, the Europeans got rid of the cancer. They got rid of those terrible Jews, and now the cancer is right among us. We have to get rid of the cancer. So we see the education, and we see... So the children all believe that Israel is this cancer, that everybody hates the Jews. We have a right to hate them also. We have to get rid of them. And so, of course, terrorism then is justified, because we need it for self-defense, and the kids grow up believing that's the right thing to do.
And the last thing we have heard recently from Palestinian media is that Israel themselves do the destruction on their own people.
Exactly, and it wasn't just the media, it was the foreign ministry. The Palestinian foreign ministry put it on their website that Israel was the one whose Israeli helicopters and airplanes were the ones who bombed all and murdered the 250 or 260 people who were at the party, dance party, and they're the ones who bombed the towns near Gaza. By the way, these towns near Gaza, of course, are nowhere near Judea and Samaria, nowhere near the West Bank. In that announcement, they called them settlements. Because, according to the Palestinian Authority, all of Israel is illegal, all of Israel is a settlement, and all of Israel has to be erased. And that's where the lies come from. It's all built on the same lie that Israel has no right to exist and eventually will not exist.
So here we see, during decades of years, been teaching in schools and in sports arena, and what have been told in their media, the result, the fruit of it, we see now. But when you see here, take Norway, for decades we have been in secular media heard that Israel is an apartheid state, we must boycott. Those two words have been going on again and again. What other kind of things is that you have been dealing with, also, such type of information?
But part of, I just have to, you mentioned that in the Norwegian media they talk about Israel as an apartheid state. It is such an outrageous lie. The Israeli Supreme Court has Arabs and Muslims. There are high-ranking soldiers in the Israeli army who are Muslims and Druze. We had one of the tragedies this week. An Israeli soldier was killed, an officer. He was a Druze. His father spoke to him. His father's in the army right now as well. His father is a general in the Israeli army. His grandfather was a general. These are Druze. They're not Jews. There's no apartheid. We've had ministers in the government who apartheid meant that in South Africa, where the term came from, there were separate benches for blacks, South Africans, and for the whites. There's no such thing as voting an election, being elected, and yet the Norwegian media, parts of it, as you say, accuse Israel of being apartheid. It is, I don't even think it's a mistake anymore. I think there is a hatred of Israel that needs a psychologist to get to the root of it, because it is so ridiculous to take a thriving democracy where the universities are filled with Arabs and the professors, and the Arabs sometimes walk around with Palestinian flags on universities, and you say, and they don't get arrested. They can do it. So, and to say it's apartheid, like I say, it's not based on mistakes anymore. It's based on hatred of Israel, and someone should understand and try to figure out why these people hate Israel and the Jewish state.
Because all of us who have been in Israel and have seen how your wonderful land and nation are working know that is a lie. So, but when we have had this lie here for people who don't know and buy it, when you see what's going on now and all the lies coming, how do we reach them, Marcus?
So how do you reach the people? Okay, so there are two types of people. There are people who are spreading the lies, and they know they're spreading lies. Those people can't be changed because they have an agenda to spread the lies. But to the other people, it's programs like yours. We have to tell them, we have to teach them, we have to let them have the information that when they come and say, oh, I heard Israel's an apartheid state, we'll say, do you know that there are Muslims who are head of Israeli hospitals, directors of Israeli hospitals can be Muslims, ministers in government. Again, and just give all the examples. A few years ago, we had a Muslim, we had an Arab who was Miss Israel in the beauty contest. And that's very significant because that was the home viewers who voted. It wasn't 10 judges who decided, oh, we're going to do something politically correct. It was the home viewers who voted for an Arab to be Miss Israel because she was charming and she was beautiful and she had very good answers to the questions. And Israelis aren't racists by any means. And they were willing to accept that an Arab could be the Miss Israel and represent us in international competition. So these are important things, and this information has to be given to the people who have been lied to by those people in the media who have an agenda, a hate agenda against Jews in Israel.
But the last question here, what is the solution? We hear here in Norway, people still believe in a two-state solution. What is your answer to that?
So my answer is that we have to listen to the Palestinians. The Palestinians don't believe in a two-state solution. They believe in a two-state strategy that will lead to one Palestinian state eliminating Israel as the solution. And when I tell you we have heard this so many times and seen this in writing in Palestinian educational materials, and I'm not talking about Hamas. The Palestinian Authority, which is getting funding from Norway, tells its people that an agreement with Israel for a two-state solution is to get Israel back to borders that it can't survive in. I'll give you an example. There's a Palestinian leader. He's a member of the Fatah Central Committee. Fatah is the party of Mahmoud Abbas. He was interviewed on television, and they asked him, what about Palestine from the river to the sea, the great Palestine? How can we? He said, everyone, including the president, meaning Mahmoud Abbas, everyone has that as the goal, but we can't reach the goal in one step. But we have a strategy. Get Israel to the 67 lines. Why? And this is the great line. Everyone knows Israel can't survive those borders. So we get Israel into those borders, and then eventually we will be able to destroy Israel. Why can't Israel survive those borders? Because the heartland of Israel, the biggest population centers, are going to be just kilometers away from Palestinian armaments, Palestinian missiles. The airport will be 3 or 4 kilometers away from the border. There would be no traffic coming in and out of the country except for El Al, because there'll be missiles landing all the time on the border. The width of the country is about 10 kilometers. 10 kilometers from the West Bank to the sea. So can Israel survive when it's only 10? And that whole area is populated with civilians. You can't even put an army there. It's very, very crowded and dense. So that's what Basaki said. Everyone knows Israel can't survive those borders. And then he said something very interesting. He said, you can say it to yourself, you can't say it to the world. So of course we tape recorded it on TV when he said it, and now we tell the world, listen to the Palestinian leaders. They are using you, Norway, to put pressure on Israel to go to those borders so that they can destroy Israel in the second stage. Why don't you listen to them? And what we heard from Basaki, we see all the time in Palestinian education. All the time. Even as explicit as that. The goal is Palestine from the river to the sea, eliminating Israel. So it's about time that the Norwegian government realizes that not only are they making a mistake, but they have moral and ethical responsibility for all the Israelis who are being killed in terrorism because you're funding the Palestinian Authority institutions that are completely building up the terrorists and teaching children to be terrorists. You have to stop funding the Palestinian Authority.
Mr. Itamar Marcus, thank you for this interview. Thank you for coming to Norway and talk to our parliament members.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to get this word out.